An Honorable Profession is brought to you by OpenCounter.com. OpenCounter builds tools for local governments to deliver permits and licenses online. Their portals make complex permitting simple, which lowers transaction costs, increases transparency, and empowers economic development. Check out OpenCounter.com to see what they can do for your community. Welcome to An Honorable Profession, a podcast giving America hope since 2018. I'm your host, Ryan Coonerty. An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. The New Deal is an organization that supports some of the most thoughtful and innovative voices in American politics. I've been a member of New Deal for years, both when I was mayor of Santa Cruz and now on the Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors. Check out some of our past episodes with guests like Washington State Lieutenant Governor Cyrus Habib, Emily Kane of Emily's List, Stephen Reed, the first African-American mayor of Montgomery, Alabama, and dozens of amazing leaders at the state and local level. You can find us at newdealleaders.org or wherever podcasts are found. And if you like what you hear, please tell your friends. We're trying to bring sanity to politics in an insane era. We need all the help we can get. Today, I'm having an important conversation on race, policing, and generational changes in politics with Tennessee Senator Raumesh Akbari. Raumesh is a 36-year-old phenom. She's a Memphis native who's an Iranian African-American lawyer and legislator. She got started in politics opposing a plan to close schools and has risen quickly to being elected to the state legislature in 2013 and to the state senate in 2018. She is now advising Joe Biden on criminal justice reform. Now, more than ever, we need to hear her voice. Senator Raumesh Akbari, welcome to An Honorable Profession.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
These are crazy times. Let me just first check in and see how you and your city of Memphis are doing.
You know, it seems like this year 2020 is just a year that keeps handing us challenges from the COVID crisis and certainly from the emerging discussions that we're now having in the wake of the George Floyd murder. So I think that, one, it's just a time of great adversity, but two, I'm hoping that it will bring us together and we'll actually continue to have real conversations that will actually address meaningful reform. That's what it's about for me. But we're doing well. We're trying to just keep moving forward, and of course, just totally aware of what's going on and not trying to move on. In this moment, we're trying to feel it and change.
How do you begin that change? There's people, there's obviously marches and protests, but you have to try to translate that into change in your city, in your state, and now you're helping the vice president think through some of those changes. What do you see as the first steps to begin addressing the many issues that we have in policing and race in this country?
Well, I think that's the difficult part, honestly. But I would first say we have to acknowledge that there is a problem. Too often, even folks that I serve with in the legislature, they're unwilling to admit that there are disparities that are leading to unarmed African-American men and women being killed. There are policies that are leading to the use of force against African-American communities. And so for me, one, we have to acknowledge that it's an issue. And then two, it's going to take multiple layers of efforts. I know there's a movement around defunding the police departments, and I think what that really means is a reallocation of resources. The same way that we were quick to militarize police departments and provide federal incentives for that, we've got to kind of move in the opposite direction. So investing in meaningful de-escalation training and policies, investing in use of force policies that really are going to protect those that the police departments are serving. And certainly the third point I would say is we have to have implicit bias training. If you have things that you're holding in your subconscious that affect how you operate and how you kind of function as a law enforcement officer, you've got to have training to recognize that so that you can change. So that, for me, those are some big things. Certainly dealing with it on a state level, and then, of course, in correspondence with my local government, where the police department actually is under the control of the city. And then, of course, with the Biden campaign through this task force, I think that we've had some really important conversations, and I'm hoping in the next few weeks our recommendations will really reflect, one, what the nation is crying out and asking for. Enough is enough. We can't have another George Floyd. We can't have another Ahmaud Arbery. We can't have another Breonna Taylor or Michael Gardner or Eric Gardner or any of those people. So Mike Brown situation or Tamir Rice, I could go on. And I think this time it's different. You see folks from all across the spectrum out demonstrating. You've seen conservatives condemn what's happened with the George Floyd situation. So it's not an easy fix. Certainly if it was, we'd already have done it. But we have to acknowledge the impact of, slavery, Jim Crow, and then systemic racism. We don't acknowledge it, we can't fix it.
And so if speaking to the people who are out in the streets right now, not only in this country, but around the world, from where you sit, where do you see as the short-term opportunity wins? And then what do you see as the big challenges going forward that we're all going to need to address?
That's a great question. One, I think that those who are out in the streets demonstrating, they're raising international awareness around why people are out demonstrating, number one, which is really big. I think in number two, which is important because we are in an election cycle right now. And I know a lot of folks feel like, I voted and it did make a difference, but it does. I won my first political election by 100 votes. It does make a difference. And when you have people in elected office, whether on a federal, state, or local level, that understand the issues around police brutality, community policing, and then just injustice in general, and are willing to make those type of policy changes, you're going to have that. If you don't have people in positions where they can make policy changes, it's not going to work. So in the short term, I'd say, first of all, keep demonstrating. Just wear a mask because COVID-19 is still out here. And two, keep forcing folks to have these difficult conversations. Never would we have imagined the NFL would apologize. Now, they haven't specifically reached out to Colin Kaepernick, but they have acknowledged that there is a horrible, their response was horrible. And I think you've seen corporations doing the same thing. So it's pushing the conversation. But I say keep demonstrating, keep raising awareness, and then have a list of changes that you think can be made, and then contact your state and local and federally elected officials to force them to do it. And by voting, that's the easiest way to get people to pay attention to you. When you have a voting block that can get someone in or out of office, automatically that brings you back into their consciousness.
And you've done this, previously in terms of building a bipartisan coalition to try to address a difficult issue that's obviously informed by bias and race, which is to reform the juvenile justice system in your state. Can you talk about what you did in that regard and what you've learned and how you think it might be applicable to what's going on right now around reforming police practices?
Certainly. I think that, again, I'm in the super minority, so I always have to get creative. And also I'm a twin by birth, so I think I've always had to build a coalition or reach some sort of compromise. So that's number one. But
I've never heard of that as good political training before, but that makes sense.
It is. From the womb to the room, we have had to negotiate. But it's about building coalitions, right? Focusing on what we want, what our end result is. Obviously, we have different ways on how we want to get there. For me, I say, well, I'm a bleeding heart liberal. I want to make sure that people have second chances. If the worst thing that they've done does not define the rest of their lives. Well, my colleagues across the aisle might be more inclined to be helpful because the cost of incarceration in Tennessee reached $1 billion, which that's pretty significant in a $38 to $39 billion budget. So just trying to kind of figure out how what can make it make sense for the person that you need to get on board, and then put aside personal differences. Focus on the issues. I might not agree with you on like 90% of the things that we're going to talk about, but that 10%, if we can find some room in there to build a coalition and actually get something passed, that's the area I'm going to focus on. I'm not going to be so blinded by the fact that I can't get you to the table on the other issues. So that's what I think, an incremental change. Nothing happens overnight. I know Dr. King said justice delayed is justice denied. I'm not talking about delaying it in that sense, but I am saying if you can take incremental steps consistently, the end result really can be something that is significant.
And tell us a little bit about sort of what the politics are like in Tennessee for those of us that aren't there, and sort of how you're trying to navigate and push progressive issues there from a super minority. And do you see that changing anytime soon?
Well, okay, so I am in the state Senate. I'm the Senate Democratic Caucus chairwoman. Of the 33 members we have in the Senate, 5 are Democrats. In the House of the 99 members, 25 are Democrats. So we are deep within a super minority. Now, I do not think I think we've gone to as low as we can go, honestly. I don't think there's a way that the districts can be gerrymandered. I mean, knock on wood, they could reduce our seats even further. But we've identified about 3 seats we think that we have some room to flip, and that's what we're trying to do, just seat by seat. And certainly we have some good candidates in mind, but it is difficult because you have to build common ground. Like, we just had a debate today on the House floor about removing the celebration of the holiday for Nathan Bedford Forrest, the first Grand Wizard of the KKK. And it's hard when you do not have members in your party. You just don't have the numbers, and you're not going to be able to. We have not been able to change the hearts and minds of those on the other side. Certainly when you're trying to push for other progressive issues, you have to find something that has bipartisan support. I've noticed that good public schools and criminal justice reform and economic development does. And so those are really the lanes that I try and operate in. And also, my community needs it. So it kind of worked out together. But for me, being in a super minority, the most important thing is attacking problems and not people. Because if you attack people, it's kind of a non-starter on conversations. You have some folks, and for me, I represent people who need to see results. We have legislation that needs to be passed, but there are different parts of my district that are in extreme poverty. So I can't be up here just to prove a point. I have to be up here to actually get meaningful policy through. But there are some folks within our party who can, and so everybody has their role. But it's definitely difficult, and we're doing everything we can to try and rebalance those numbers. But it's hard in Tennessee. And also, I should say, because of gerrymandering, the legislature is really not representative of the state. While we are a red state, about 44%, I think, of the population voted for a Democrat in the statewide race. It's just that the way our districts are gerrymandered, it's very difficult for us to realize those in actual seats. That's
an incredible delta between 44% to 5 seats. That's a lot of gerrymandering. So when you have people in your community in the streets and they're pushing and they're angry and frustrated at the speed of change, and you don't have a lot of levers to pull, how are you trying to have people not lose hope in the streets? And then also, secondarily, not only in your community, but you've been played a key role in recruiting young people, women, people of color, to run for office. So how do you have those conversations when people see the system as being, ineffective, maybe at worst, or slow at best? That is difficult. One, I still have hope. So in my discussions with folks, I kind of try and put them on that level. Even though it doesn't happen as quickly as we'd like, there is still room for change. So we always shoot for the moon, and then we usually will come up with a compromise that works out. Like, for instance, around expungement. That was a big thing where we were able to get bipartisan support, and we didn't get everything we wanted as far as expansion of eligible offenses, but we got a number of them. And so communicating that and really, showing how that has impacted folks' lives does make a difference. But a lot of people all the way to the other end of the spectrum, and certainly those who have not really had to deal with politicians or elected office, definitely feel like it's too slow. But I think, one, just continue to maintain contact and conversation and showing, letting them be a part of the process, because this is a people's house. It's a people's chamber. It's not, we represent the people. So I think that's the most important thing I try and keep in mind, and certainly in my communications. And there's a role for an activist, there's a role for an elected official. Everybody has their lane that they operate in, but we can operate together. And I think we've been able to be successful
in Nashville and in Memphis, honestly. And I think a lot of folks are recognizing, hey, they're in a super minority and they're still able to get some things done, and that's what we have to focus on. And then more pressure is put on our local governments because, like in Tennessee, our cities are blue. So there's no reason why certain progressive policies cannot get through through their different legislative bodies. So I think there a lot of pressure comes there as well. But I'm still hopeful. I'm not discouraged just yet. I have discouraging days, just discouraging moments. But I still know why I'm here, and I have to, kind of hold on to that, because otherwise you'll just want to burn down the building and run down the street. So
yeah, there are more discouraging moments and days these days than there have been in a long time. But hopefully,
oh yes,
the arc of the universe is bending. So talk about your decision to spend your time in these hopeful and sometimes not so hopeful days. You're a talented person. You're an attorney. You could be doing a lot of things. How did you find your way into public service?
So I have a long little story, so I'll try and make it brief. Listen, I found out I was a Democrat when I was in second grade, the summer before third grade. I know that sounds crazy, but I remember having a conversation with my parents, and I was like, "Oh, I want President Bush to win," and they were like, "Nope, no, honey, we're Democrats. We want Bill Clinton to win." And I said, "Well, why?" And my mother said, "Democrats care about people," and that kind of stuck with me. And I was also the little nerd who read every book she could find and then reread them. And I remember when Harold Ford Jr. got elected to Congress, I was in sixth grade. And I was like, man, he's so young. He's a young attorney. And I knew I wanted to be an attorney. And I'm like, that would be pretty neat, not just to, to be able to make laws. I think that's pretty cool, right? So that's still just immature sixth grader. Fast forward, went to law school, got out, started working for the family business. And I had a mentor who was state representative, and I was working with her on a local issue related to closure of a fire department in a community, and then the voter registration campaign. Was planning on being mentored by her, so we came to the Capitol in June of 2013. It was my first time coming to the Capitol, and we passed by a hearing room, and she said, next January you can shadow me, and you can kind of see how we do things. And then my predecessor in the House ended up passing away of pancreatic cancer, and my mentor asked if I wanted to run for that office, and 7 of us ran. I won by 100 votes, and so that January, instead of being her shadow, I actually was being sworn into the legislature. And so for me, it's always been taking a problem, trying to build a coalition, and getting it solved. That's what keeps me going, and seeing how it can impact someone's life directly, or to break down kind of the red tape and the confusion and the intimidation around state government. Like, for instance, if someone is trying to get their unemployment benefits, and we can make a call and cut through all that red tape, or if they're trying to get their, a lot of local issues and state issues kind of overlap, which is why I always try and have good coalitions built with my school board members in the district I represent, my city council, and my county commission members, because they might not know. It might be a federal issue. It might be a county or city issue, and being able to connect them with someone so they don't have to call around, and it makes life easier for people. And so that's why I'm committed to it. And I always tell folks, listen, I won't run for re-election the moment I stop enjoying it and I stop feeling like I'm making a difference. And that's true, because it's not like the legislature, like you said, it does not pay a lot of money. It actually generally will lose you money. So you have to be in it for the right reasons. Because quite frankly, if you're making a lot of money in an elected body, you're probably going to go to jail soon, because you're probably breaking some laws. So that's what keeps me going. Honestly, there are those days where, I think the day that was the worst for me was the day that in-state tuition for undocumented students failed on the House floor by 1 vote. I mean, we actually had Democrats who voted against it, and that, to me, was just awful. And then when the bill was brought back the following year, to hear the hateful remarks of my colleagues, I've never cried in committee, and I just could not. I could not make remarks, because it hurt me to. It was dehumanizing these young adults who all they wanted was a chance. And that's really those discouraging, awful moments also give me fuel to say we have to keep going. We have to represent people who don't normally have a voice at the table. And for whatever reason, I seem to be getting lots of seats at tables where I'm the only Democrat, the only black person, the only woman, only person from West Tennessee. And so for me, I'm trying to take advantage of that and make sure that I'm actually representing the people who sent me there.
And how was it finding your voice? You at that point you were like 30 years old, right, when you were first elected?
Yeah, 29.
29, and you're of Iranian and African American descent. Mm-hmm. You're, I imagine there are very few other legislators who look like you or have your life experience. You from going from a shadow to a legislator is a big jump. How did you find your footing? And it's been remarkable the way that you've taken a leadership role in the legislature and in national politics in a relatively short period of time. So tell me about that emergence as a leader.
Well, I think I just tried to focus on the work, and I found that because of that, I would get respect from my colleagues, and I think also just being prepared. And for me, it was just I want to know what I'm talking about, and I also think again that goes to the negotiation piece with having a twin. I'm used to there having to be some sort of compromise always, and so I think also again my policy of attacking policies and not people has gone a long way. But honestly, it was about the work. Like even when I was involved with the Clinton campaign, when they first contacted me and I first started holding events, they didn't realize I was an elected official because they thought I was just a grassroots organizer because I wanted to be done. I'm not asking for a position. I'm not asking for some sort of appointment. I want that person to be in office because I believe in them. And I think that's the same approach I've taken in the legislature. I want this to be accomplished, and so that's why I'm going to work on it and work for it. And I find that recognition will come. It's not something that you focus on. And another rule that I have is don't drink your own Kool-Aid. Like, just don't do it. When you start drinking your own Kool-Aid, then you're not kind to people and you don't respect their time or anything else, and it's ugly. You become somebody that you said you would never be. And I tried. And also I have a family that grounds me always. Like again, twin sister, okay? Like I might come home from a massive discussion on, a $40 billion budget and I just presented a check for $1 million. And she's like, what are we having for dinner? What are you going to cook? So, or did you take the dogs out? So, yeah, I think just staying humble is always helpful as well. But, and again, I like it. I feel like it's just it's something that there's opportunity for change, and again that to me is a big deal. And then of course you always get I think I posted something on Instagram this morning. I once had a lobbyist tell me that I was a credit to my race, which I thought, oh my goodness, did you really just say that to me? Or you're so articulate. You get all those micro and macro aggressions, but again I focus on I'm here for the work. I don't have to take any of these people home with me. I have great friends across the aisle and on my side of the aisle. But again, we don't have to be friends. We just have to be colleagues and we have to be cordial. So try and focus on that. That
must be easier said than done when people are saying that. And I know you've also been tagged as a Muslim representative, and you're getting, even though you're not, but you've taken a really courageous stand of saying it doesn't matter if I am or I'm not. I'm trying to serve, but it's you're facing discrimination from a lot of different angles.
It's interesting. It was when I first got elected. That's what they were all trying to figure out. I think the press was like, "Have we just elected the first Muslim to the state house?" And I was like, "No, but if I was, it's not a problem." No, I actually went to a Southern Baptist church, which throws them all off. Particularly once the clerk of the house asked me about the cross that I was wearing. He was just so confused, and I'm like, "This is a cross my mother gave me for Christmas." He's like, "But I thought," I was like, and I was so ready. I could not wait to give this answer because I knew somebody was going to ask. I was like, "Are you talking about the cross that our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ was sacrificed on so that we all might have everlasting life?" And he was like, like, Like mouth dropped open, and I couldn't wait. I was like, now go spread that message, okay? But again, I'm like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you love. It doesn't matter who you worship. Are you here to serve the people? That's it. Let it go. I mean, I'm not gonna push my beliefs on anyone any more than I want people to push their beliefs on me. But I did have a lot of fun messing with folks on that one.
It's crazy town. So you've stepping out of Tennessee for a second. You spoke at the DNC at the national conference, and you've now advising on the task force, advising Vice President Biden. How do you think the Democratic Party is dealing with this crisis, with a somebody who's acting as with fascist and divisive tendencies in the White House? As a leader of the party, what are you seeing?
Well, I do think that it's just such a contrast, and just going from having someone like President Obama in office to having Donald Trump, who does not seek to unify, does not seek to comfort or console, no matter what circumstance we're going through. And certainly, we find ourselves in a position with the COVID crisis where the entire world has been brought to its knees, and then certainly the emerging issues and discussions that we're trying to have about police brutality and equality. And I'm proud of how the Democratic candidate, how Joe Biden, Vice President Biden, is handling it. Certainly, our task force, it's been very encouraging, the types of conversations we've had around criminal justice reform, the recommendations that we're going to make. We're not done yet. We have several more meetings left, several more hours of, discussing and debating and kind of trying to put forth the best product. But it reminded me of what was lost when the current occupant came into the White House and what possibilities we have moving forward. So I just every time I hear him speak or do something, I think that we're being spoofed. And then I have to remember, no, this is actually the President of the United States who has picked fights with our traditional allies, who has put white supremacists against peaceful protesters, who does not believe and did not believe that the COVID-19 crisis was a significant one, and still refuses to wear a mask, which in turn his followers won't wear a mask. They politicize wearing a mask in the middle of a global pandemic. I'm happy with the direction that Vice President Biden is going in. He has reached out to the Floyd family. He has continued to do virtual events. He's trying to take into consideration all of the feedback that has been presented by those who are demonstrating. And he seems to be trying to unite as opposed to divide. And that, to me, is the most important thing.
So I have to ask, what's next for you? As you start to think about how, as you said, you can have fun and have an impact, how do you think about your future?
Well, right now, fortunately, I do not have to run for re-election after having had to run in a special in 13, full in 14, 16, and 18. Oh. So, right. It's awful. So being in the Senate, you can run every 4 years. I don't have to run again until 2022. Right now, I'm the caucus chair, so I'm focused on getting more Democrats elected aggressively. I mean, we'll see what happens. I never close doors that haven't opened, and I also don't want to pin all my success or my level of achievement in my mind on a particular office. Like, as long as I can serve and be effective, I'm going to kind of move into that direction. But right now, I'm concentrating on being the best state senator I can be, and getting some more folks up here to help me, because it's awful.
And what do you say to folks who are in the streets and they look at legislative bodies, whether at the state, local, or federal level, and they don't see a lot of people who look like them? How do they begin to engage to change the system or to be the system?
Well, I certainly think running for office is a big deal. And if you're not the type of person that wants to run for office, finding a candidate, doing your research, finding one that supports the ideals that you support, and supporting them as a candidate is a huge thing, too. And then also continue to recognize the power of your voice and through demonstrating. If you look at what's happened in Virginia with their shift, or some of the things that Reverend Barber was able to do in the legislature where he's from, it was from folks just saying enough is enough. So don't be discouraged. Know that this process is not easy. It's not quick. If it was easy to change, everyone would be doing it. So stay plugged in and know that you can serve in capacities that you couldn't even imagine. If it's not on a state level, look at a local level. Look at school board. Look at city council. And if you don't want to run for office, support those who do, because that's how you can make real change. And certainly vote. Tell your people to vote, and hold your elected officials accountable once they win.
That's good advice, and hopefully everyone and their brothers and sisters takes that to heart. In terms of, and it's amazing to show how much crisis and chaos we're in right now, that we're now a half hour into the conversation and we haven't talked about how COVID is impacting your community and your state. So, how is the pandemic impacting Memphis, and sort of what do you see going forward, and what are your needs as a community going forward?
Well, our mayor fortunately shut things down much earlier than the state. I think the big cities did. And even once the state made moves to reopen, they allowed the big cities, the 6 largest counties who have their own health departments, to kind of phase things in on their own. The thing is, though, with the reopening of businesses, we have seen an uptick in cases. I think the governor actually just made an announcement earlier today about it, and certainly in our cities and counties. And I think there will be a move to try and blame those who are demonstrating, but we're still really seeing the effects of Memorial Day and just being back in business. I hope that people don't have to have a significant loss before they take this seriously. But I know that our small businesses are suffering. I'm on a task force where we've tried to give them some sort of relief. I know that people are struggling and don't have employment, and fortunately, they have additional dollars from the federal government that has helped. But we're looking at budget shortfalls, not only on a state level, what we're encountering, but on a local level, which I think a lot of, especially in a state like Tennessee, where tourism is such a big part of the income that we generate. Memphis and Nashville are some of our leads in that. And I don't think anyone really feels comfortable traveling right now. So that's kind of what we're looking at, what resources will look like down the line, what additional support will be needed. And certainly, I mean, our hospital capacity, our PPE capacity is good. We get an update every day about it. But, folks need to take this seriously, and what I want is a medical treatment protocol that is effective. But I mean, I'm sure everyone wants that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we just have to be careful and cautious, and not allow everything else that's going on to make us kind of turn things down. And so I'm actually a part of a coalition we're forming. We're called Mask Up Memphis. We've actually formed it, and we're giving out 20,000 masks, and we've partnered up with the city of Memphis. It's myself and the minority leader in the House, Karen Camper, partner with the city of Memphis, the Transportation Authority, and the Memphis Grizzlies, and that's one of the things we've done to try and, help do our part as well.
Yeah, as you talk about it, Memphis and Nashville are a national resource for music. But concerts and gatherings are, some of the last to come back, along with this, the tradition of sports, both collegiate and professional, in your state. So the impacts must be significant, not only on your budgets, but on sort of the cultural life of Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's difficult. I mean, we have live music all the way across the state, and certainly in Memphis and Nashville. And you to see these places closed down, to pass by Beale Street, which is in my district, and see places that are shuttered, or to go down Broadway in Nashville and see the honky tonks closed. It's definitely something different, and it's also difficult because you have folks who are kind of a part of the gig economy whose lives have fallen apart. And so I'm happy that our state did approve their ability to file for unemployment compensation. And also, if they're acting as small businesses, they will get a part of some of our CARES dollars that we've designated for small businesses. But it's difficult, and I'm hoping and knowing that once this is all over, we're just going to bounce back, and we're going to be more thankful and appreciative for all these things we've taken for granted for so long. I don't know that I'll ever turn down a party invitation ever again. Like, oh, yeah, nope, I need to fly somewhere, let's do it. I don't know that I'll complain about dealing with the airport ever again, so.
Yeah, let's hope that's sooner rather than later.
Exactly.
So I just want to thank you for your leadership. It's been on the national level. You're always offering really thoughtful and engaging and inspiring approaches to so many difficult issues. And I wish you best of luck as you try to both navigate the many challenges you're facing in your state, and then as all of us in the nation.
Oh, thank you. Definitely, and happy to continue to serve.
Well, thank you, and and hopefully we'll be hopping on a plane and seeing each other at the next New Deal conference sometime soon.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get back in person.
Right.
So thank you, and please stay safe and stay healthy and keep doing the good work.
Definitely. Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to An Honorable Profession. Please subscribe to hear more amazing leaders. And keep asking your elected officials to be honorable. Boots Road Group produced this podcast. I'm Ryan Coonerty, and because we keep things honorable, no tax dollars were used in the making of this podcast.